Hi, I'm Christina Conolly, and welcome to our new web series called Waymaking. We'll be covering a variety of mental health and social emotional topics in this series. Our goal is to help families make their way through many of the emotional challenges that we are faced with today. I have with me today Harley, who is a senior at Walt Whitman High School. We are going to be discussing stress and anxiety from the student perspective. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me today, Christina. It has definitely been interesting, to say the least, navigating these turbulent waters as a student. But fortunately, as a senior, I've been able to keep a pulse on some of the key issues affecting students today. So I would love to hear your feedback. The first question I have is in regards to being in such close proximity with a family and how it can add a great deal of domestic stress. What are some strategies you would recommend for dealing with this?
Right. And thank you again. And for students, I mean, especially being in like your home, you're not with your friends at school with, especially as a teenager, we know like teenagers love to hang out with their friends and stuff. And then all of a sudden here you are, you're stuck with the adults. And so, what does that look like? What are some of the signs of that? So, and what we're seeing from kids and from parents who are talking about it is like, especially there are a lot of signs of conflict, either between the kids and their siblings, the kids with other family members, with their parents, a lot of arguing, just kind of like what's going on. And a lot of it is more than normal but just due to the stress that's there. We also have to worry about kids when all of a sudden they're sleeping a lot. And, teenagers tend to sleep a lot, and that's normal. But sleeping more than usual, or maybe you're having trouble sleeping. Like all of a sudden you see your mind is just going, like you can't turn it off. It's like a motor, and it's just like you're thinking about, the stress of, let's say, graduation, or the stress of trying to get your grades, or the stress of, how many all my classes done, and you're worried about getting sick, or you're worried about your family members getting sick, and all this stuff. So is what we call like rumination. Just keep going and going. But then also all of a sudden, like you're eating more. Right. So, like kids like to eat, but all of a sudden you are going to your pantry and grabbing snacks, at 1 a.m. because you're up and you're having trouble sleeping, or you don't feel like eating at all. So, which, again, these are things that are different than what you normally are looking at. And then also just being irritable. People are talking to you and you're just like, oh, whatever. I don't want to be bothered. Leave me alone. Or like you have your work and you're like, you know what? I don't want to be bothered with this. And you just give up. Like, and just like I just don't care. Or your family's talking to you about the weather and you're like, why are you bothering me? Why are you talking to me? So things like this, and it happening a lot. Because I mean, we all have bad days. We all have days when, like, you know what? I don't want to be bothered with somebody. But if you're feeling like that every day, then we need to have some conversations around like what else is going on. And for our younger kids who are maybe looking at this, and maybe all of a sudden something happens and you're crying about it and you're getting upset, or you know what, like you normally like to go play with your toys, or you like to watch a video or go on YouTube and do things, and you don't feel like doing that anymore. You're like, I just don't, and you're sitting by yourself in your room in the dark. Like, so we have to be worried about that. And then also worried about kids and alcohol and drug use. And so while, no student is of age in order to partake in alcohol or in other drugs that are illegal. But we want to make sure that if you are a student who may be struggling with that, or maybe at night you're sneaking in and grabbing your parents' bottle of whatever that might be and you're drinking it, and you're doing that a lot, like we want you to talk to somebody. Like that's a sign of stress, a sign that there's something else going on. Like you are in terms of what we call self-medication. And so like you're having a hard time dealing with the stress, and what can we do to help you? Because using alcohol or other drugs is not the way of managing that stress.
Absolutely. And I mean, I have seen those issues hit my peers, and it's devastating, especially for people who had pre-existing, symptoms of depression and anxiety. All of this emotional uncertainty only exacerbates that. Academically, I guess I wanted to ask, how can students maintain a sense of academic accountability and motivation, especially considering at-home distractions and as you're talking about all of these symptoms of stress?
Right. And so, and we know that it's come out now that MCPS is going to have a pass fail, right, for our grades. And kids may be like, you know what, I'm not even going to really bother, put more my best effort. And no, we want students to still be engaged. I was having a conversation with Dr. Karen Cruz, who's the supervisor of school counseling, and she's been talking to colleges and universities. And one of the things they're saying is that even though, you know, schools around the country have this pass fail, they're still looking at, are students still engaged in the academic process? Because that shows a sense of resiliency, a sense of, because when you're in college and you're on your own, you know, to get your grades and stuff done, there are going to be people there pressuring you to do it. And if you're at this place here where you're like, you know what, I don't want to be bothered, then how is that going to impact you if you decide to go into college? Or let's say you're going into the workforce and you don't complete your grades, you know, because when you go to work, you have deadlines, you have things you have to do, and you're going to have to be independently do them. So this is a sign that, you know, despite the adversity, despite what's going on, that you still can manage your deadlines, get your assignments done, and do all the things that, you know, you've been required to do. So it's important, but also it's also important because it's keeping up with your schedule, keeping you know, like what you're doing every day, and getting you back your sense of normalcy. Because school is something that all kids have to go through, right? You know, from preschool up through 12th grade. And that's part of your routine. And when you get off your routine, it kind of throws off your whole body in terms of what you're supposed to do. That's why you're having trouble sleeping or eating or other things, because your schedule is thrown off. And so, because people like routine. So doing your work, while you might be like, wait a minute, you're telling me that doing work is going to help me with my mental health? Like, yes, doing work can help you with your mental health. Because we know that might be odd. You're like, wait, what? Because doing things, keeping your mind running and active, you know, helps, and helps your brain to keep going and see that you're doing things that are normal part of your schedule. So even if you may not, you know, you may struggle, or, and as I said before, if you're at a place where you're like, you know what, I give up, I don't want to do any of this, that is a sign of stress. And so, and we want parents to see that too. If you have a kid like, oh, I don't want to be bothered with any of this, and they go away and they're avoiding it, that is not just a sign of your child being defiant. That is a sign that your child is having trouble with anxiety. And so what can we do to help them with that? So if you're feeling like as a student that you don't want to do this, then how can we help you, and how can we get you some support? And go talk to your teacher, go talk to your counselor. We're here to help you.
Right. I am so grateful that you mentioned the counselor support, because I think so many students just aren't aware that all of the support mechanisms that were in school are still available to them. And it's so important, especially for people who don't feel like they can find that support in their families. So thank you. My final question is broader in scope, but I guess I just wanted to know, how do students manage anxiety regarding not only their present sense of loss? I definitely experienced that as a senior with all these end of the year activities, but also this overwhelming future unpredictability.
Right. And for most of us, you know, going through this, because there is this sense of loss, you know, like you're a senior in high school, my daughter is a fifth grader, and all of a sudden, you know, like she lost a safety patrol picnic, she's lost her promotion ceremony, she's lost a fifth grade bowling thing, whatever that might be, you know, like, so there is definitely, you know, that sense of loss that's there. But we have to make sure that we are maintaining our relationships with our friends, our relationships with our family, doing things that are fun. And despite, you know, all of this, like, what can we do to establish, in a sense of control over what you can control in your life? Because we can't control what goes on in the community. You know, like, we don't control when the governor says we can go back to school. We don't control when the CDC and all these things say that they've managed the pandemic. Like, we can't control any of that. But we can't control what's going on at home. We can control our own individual actions. And so what can each of us do in order to bring a sense of joy, a sense of happiness within our lives? Like, there's a study that looks at, you know, like happiness and whether you have the power in order to maintain like happiness and joy that's there. And some of it is genetic, like how happy are your parents might control how happy you make it. Some of it, like 10% of it is environmental, but 50% of it is on us. So what can each of us do in order to find a sense of joy? What are the things that make you happy? Like, do you have hobbies? Do you have things that you like to do? Or finding new things that you like to do in order to help you. Like my daughter and I, we like Legos. And so, watching Lego Masters, building Legos has been fun. I found a game online called Bashmitten, which is like a mix between tennis and badminton. So it has this weird kind of plastic ball, and we'll go out into the outside and we just hit it back and forth with each other. It's not competitive or anything else, but it brings a new sense of joy for us to hang out with each other. And again, because we can't control all of these things, and we're not asking students to like go and, cure COVID-19, but what can each of us do in order to bring that sense of control to help us to maintain each of these days so that we aren't struggling with the stress as much, and keeping our minds active so that we're not constantly thinking about the stress as much. So all this can help. And we know it's hard, but it's important, and I really appreciate you, Harley, for coming, and asking these questions today. Because think about this, like what you're doing now is going to help how many of your peers out there who may look at this and be like, what, like I got a new idea or something that's going on, or maybe this gave me information that is telling me that maybe there is something wrong and maybe I do need some help through this. So, this is really great.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. And again, and for all of our viewers that are out there, I want to thank Harley again for coming in today and spending time with us to talk about stress management from the student perspective. And we want to thank our viewers again for joining us for our new series, Waymaking. And if you have additional questions or comments that you want us to discuss on the show, please see the link on your screen. And please join us again for the next time of Waymaking.